because it seemed that the parents would have the kids outside for hours at a time, not in school, standing in lines and doing farm work. They were not given breaks, and they certainly weren't given time to play.
This is why, in part, we are not and will not be marching in anyone's streets. I'm Antoine Michael, and this is the breakdown. Let's get into this. Rage. Intense rage. If you have not already, make sure you watch I Am Not a Lawyer's full TikTok about this case. Heads up, you are going to need all of your prayers, your affirmations, and meditations, especially if you are Black, to be able to get through that TikTok. This is why, in part, we are not and will not be marching in anyone's streets. This couple took advantage of an adoption system that permitted them access to not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Black children. And they knew that governmental systems and structures and adoption as an institution would see them as inherently good and would not keep up with them and would allow them the room and space to do whatever they want. They moved these babies from Minnesota to Washington to West Virginia to replicate practices that they feel that they should be entitled to. This is not the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, not even the 1990s. We are now well into our way in the new millennium. And one thing this case makes clear is that this particular type of social attitude and understanding is something that is taught. This is something that is taught as a right of entitlement. And that both sides of the fence failed these children until it got before the right judge. Shout out to the judge and the neighbors, right, for doing the work of allyship and different things of that sort. But adoption systems didn't even follow up on these children. And these parents and other neighbors who have seen this before in these other states thought that it was okay. These babies were placed in the field to do work that grown adults thought that they were too good to do, but that Black children were perfectly qualified to do. They thought these Black children weren't even deserving of an education. Doesn't that sound like Harvard versus, Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard? In terms of, why are you letting all the Black children inside of Harvard? Doesn't that sound like this to you? That these people didn't even think that these babies deserved a right to education, but that they should work. And then further, that they exposed these babies to endurance tests. Do you know the historical and social context that endurance test comes from in the United States as it relates to Black people? They fed these babies once a day and then locked them away. Do you know where that type of social and historical practice comes from? Let's be very clear that the institutions that they were trying to erect was one that we call slavery. And what these folks did is not something new. This is historical. And it reminds me of apprenticeships of Black children, which took place after the Civil War, which allowed for white folks to replicate the conditions of enslavement by way of using Black children. What's a book that you can read about this? It's Labor of Innocence by Karen Siff, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. And she's looking at what takes place in North Carolina. And listen to what she says here in the text. And she's looking at this across race and gender lines, by the way. But listen to what she says specifically. She says, the first significant significant period of change was in the 1850s, when, in an increasingly hostile racial environment, the state Supreme Court intensified its efforts to limit the rights of African American parents. Two North Carolina Supreme Court cases, Midget versus McBride, 1855, and Frolic versus Shonwall, 1859/1860, show a change in doctrine, specifying that unlike white women who bore white children, white women who bore children of color must see their children apprentice. Must see. Right? Do you see how law is setting the expectation there? She goes on to say, in 1865 and 1866, race again appeared to characterize apprenticeship as Southern whites used the institution of apprenticeship to restore a white supremacist order in the South. And here we see in this moment where they are using the institution of adoption to reinstate and reinforce that same social order. Malcolm X said, anytime you are south of the Canadian border, you are South. In other words, the South is not just a geographical location within the United States, but that the South in and of itself is an ideology that is pervasive in the United States, that wherever a good number of white folks find themselves, that South is actually an ideology, and that they carry out those particular things within the geographic and social context where they find themselves, wherever they are in their municipality. And so these folks were able to skip from Minnesota to Washington to West Virginia and not be questioned about it until folks who were aware in the West Virginia area was like, oh, wait, hold on a minute. This looks like something I might have learned about this from one of my friends who are black, and I need to speak up and say something about this. And these folks intentionally chose isolated rural areas because they wanted to replicate farm-like conditions, plantation-like conditions, and put these children in these exact same situations as apprenticeships, which reflect and mirror that which took place in enslavement. We are tired. Now, here is the thing as it relates to segregation, right? Here is, especially about this thing that's going on with Trump. All we ask is to be left alone. These folks went and adopted these children. They opted in, and governmental systems and structures let them do it. I want to say this. If this whole thing, about segregation plays out, leave us alone, please. Leave us be. The problem is that when we are prospering, even in our innocence as children, we are still meddled with. I pray that these children heal, that they're able to find their innocence again, that they're able to recover from the years of mistreatment that they had been exposed to via these folks, because people do not know how to leave us alone. That even when we are kids, they have to go and bother us. There's work to be done here. Be so for real. Oh my goodness, be so for real. This is unreal. I really pray and hope that these children heal and that resources are in place that will allow them to recover their lives. But if y'all want to know why we are in a period of rest and we will not be in your streets, this is why. Leave us alone. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.